Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 855. Before I get going, I have to admit that the quality of this game was pretty awful, even by my standards. But well, I thought it was entertaining, and at least you get a chance to spot the blunders. So it'll be a good tactical workout for you in this postmortem video. So anyway, I had the white pieces. I started off with knight f3. He went with d6. You can see d6 is pretty far down the list, but there's nothing wrong with this move actually. Still seems fine. I went with g3. If I wanted to get the most out of the opening, if you want to get the most out of the opening in a similar position, d4 is probably the way to go. But I was just going for a Reti setup. So I'm not counting these as mistakes. These are okay moves within the range of normal opening play, I think. So he went e4, I went e5 rather, I went d3. Stopped that pawn from advancing. And he went knight f6, and I went bishop g2. So I've just got this little King's Indian attack kind of setup. Could follow up with e4, but I eventually played with c4. So at that point it starts to take on the character of a reverse Sicilian, a closed Sicilian where I've got a dragon setup, and black has played d6 rather than d5, so the center is closed. Anyway, he went h6 here. I'm sure that move is a bit slow. So white comes out of this with a comfortable edge. Let's see, I castled here. He goes knight c6. He goes c4. And he goes b6. So right here, this is the first chance. See if you can spot the tactic. What's the best move for white? Okay, pause the video if you want time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now. Whenever you see a move like b6, that should start your tactical sensors a-tingling, because it left this knight on c6 undefended. It's just sitting there loose, and there is a way to exploit it. Knight takes e5, because not only is it undefended, but it's also pinned, and I've got two pieces attacking it, so he can't defend it. I can still just take it, and if he tries to unpin, then once again I just take it, and what else? Oh, and if he takes my knight, then I take his rook in the corner, and I'm up the exchange plus a pawn. So either way, I win a piece, or I win the exchange and a pawn, both of which are worth about 3 points, and good enough for a quick win. Anyway, I didn't play that. I went knight c3, just continuing my setup. I went bishop b7. I went a3 here, knight d4. So he's putting pressure on my knight here. I just exchanged off. This is all good for me. In fact, I'm still winning at this point in terms of just being up material, because after this exchange, I can take his bishop with a tempo on the rook. And then what's the best move here? The move I played is good, but it's not best. So see if you can spot the best move here. Okay, pause the video if you want time to think about it. This is a pretty simple one. I can save the bishop with tempo by playing bishop c6 check. After he responds to the check, then I can save the knight. And once again, I come out of this a whole piece up. Instead, I just retreated my bishop back to g2 and let him take my knight. I took back. I do have a winning position here as well, but it's just up a pawn, not up. Well, I'm up a pawn, plus I have the bishop pair, so I still have a strong edge. But anyway, the other wins would have been simpler. So let's continue on a little bit further. Let's see, bishop e7. And now I play this bishop c6 check move. He moved his king here. If he tried to block with knight d7, which is kind of what I was expecting, I have this move queen a4, and he actually has to give up another pawn to try and wriggle out of this. He can't castle because that leaves his knight under defended, and he has no way to defend that knight, so it's in big trouble. But he can play a6, threatening to play b5 and save the knight that way, giving up another pawn. Now he has time to castle, and then after I bring my queen back to attack his knight, he can just move it. But anyway, that'd be 2 pawns up, and that would be winning. So king f8 is not the worst move there. Maybe the best move even. I go with e4. So that's one of many reasons why I was still in a winning position, even though I had played badly. I guess my opponent was just in such bad shape to start with. Even after I failed to take his pieces, I still have a winning edge here. So anyway, the game continues. He plays knight d7 here. I push on with d4. I get a big center. He goes g5. So he's just going for the attack, which makes sense, actually. He's just in such a bad position that he's got to do something to try and stir up trouble. So he's just trying to open some lines. And I didn't really want to allow him to open this line, but I didn't see any way to avoid it. And he played queen h5, which I was sort of expecting, so I didn't react in the right way here. But once again, what's the best move? Okay, pause the video if you want time to look at the board before making your answer. The answer is I should take his knight. That's the best move. So anyway, that's 3 pretty horrible blunders right there. Let's see. So when the queen came out, I went with king g2. I was worried about the attack over here, and I wanted to open up a line for my rook to come over and defend. Let's see. He played knight f6 right away, so I don't get to take his knight anymore. And I went rook h1. And in spite of all these blunders, he's just black was just starting from such a bad position that I am still winning here. So I keep a winning edge. Let's go through this, but not all the way. Actually, let him in at one point. Let's see. He pushes on with h4. I defend with queen f3. I think this is okay. At first, the chess engine likes queen d3 a lot better, but after a while, it seems to recognize they're about the same. Let's see. He went king g7 here. I went rook h3. Yeah, he's just trying to get the king out of the way, I guess, so he can bring his rooks over. Not sure why. Maybe he felt a little exposed on e7. But allowing me to bring my rook up means my defense is pretty comfortable now. So let's see. He played rook b to g8. Yeah, he brings his rook over. I bring my rook over. And then he gets his king out of the way. So he's all set up for the attack here. And I played queen f5 here to neutralize it. Chess engine at first didn't like this, and so I was looking at what it suggested for an alternative. It wants to play a4 here, and then expects black to play king e7, and then it wants to play queen f5. So it's not opposed to this idea of trading queens here. It seems like a pretty logical thing to do to alleviate some of the pressure, but it wanted to get in this a4 move. And I guess maybe the other point is that black doesn't have any good way of advancing his attack there, so I have time for that move. Anyway, I went with queen f5 right away. He took back, played rook to h5, rounding up my pawn. I grabbed his pawn, he grabbed mine. So I'm just staying up material here, and just wanted to trade off the rooks and go into this endgame where I think I'm winning. Let's see. The chess engine prefers rook e1. This is a kind of move I don't often spot. It's basically, there's this threat of checkmate here, so his knight won't be able to move. Well, it's not a checkmate. I guess the king can run around here. But this is the kind of move that's just restricting the options that black has. So it's not directly threatening anything. It's just kind of putting the question to black, oh, okay, what's your next move? And apparently in this case, it's a strong move. So the chess engine wants to do nothing, basically. So both sides sit around moving their pawns for a while. And I guess this gradually gets better for white. But this kind of slow approach is very tough for me to play. But technically, I think that's the best way to play this position. Anyway, I just went in for the rook trade. He drops his knight into g4, looking at my looking at my f2 pawn, but I have time to trade rooks. And then brought my bishop back that defends this pawn and attacks his knight. So he defended his knight, played rook to h4, putting more pressure on the knight, activating the rook. Here, let's cancel that. But actually, the chess engine likes rook to e1. I guess the knight is not really doing any harm there, so chasing it back doesn't do anything immediately. And I do kind of want to keep his rook tied up because his rook can come over here and harass this a-pawn, which I guess one of the points is that, and it can't do that as long as it's defending the knight. So when I play rook to h4 and force him to move the knight, I'm also enabling his rook to move. So once again, playing a little more circumspectly here with rook e1, while keeping the king cut off, and maybe I come down to the first rank or the second rank here at some point, or the 8th and 7th ranks. Anyway, I went rook to h4, and he didn't move his knight. He defended it with f5, which actually blocks his rook from coming over, but he gets in this move later, so we'll see this idea. Oh, actually, maybe he doesn't. Let's see. The chess engine is recommending, the reason why it thought this was not so great for white, not as good. White is still ahead here, but it thinks black should just retreat the knight, reposition it somewhere better. And then I have to worry about the a-pawn because he can bring his rook over and attack it. But if I push it to a4, I'm just in time to defend it. So I still keep an edge here. But anyway, that's best play for black. Instead, he defended the knight. And I went with bishop to d5 check. Went king g7. Went king f3, attacking the knight. Well, it's not really attacking the knight. I guess maybe I'm thinking of bringing my king up here to attack his rook. And I note that he can't check my king. His knight, the checking squares for the knight are both covered. So he went back with his knight at this point, knight to f6, and I brought my bishop in to e6. So I'm just going to round up this pawn if he lets me. He went with knight to e4. He's going to, sorry, not there. He went with knight to e4. And he's going to round up one of my pawns too, so this turns into a trade. Bring my rook over. He grabs on c3. I grab on f5. Oh, I took with the rook in case he wanted to trade. And actually, the chess engine thinks he should trade. Take here, take here. And at first, it just gives white a +1 advantage. I would think that my advantage is bigger than that, just because I have this pair of passed pawns, and I have a bishop, which can be useful as a long-range piece, holding back these pawns over here. So I would think this is winning, but the chess engine does not immediately find it. It may just need to look deeper. But anyway, I was willing to play that position. Let's see. So after rook takes f5, he just retreated his rook. He didn't go for the endgame. Let's see, I went for this check. He brought his king over here. And I defended my bishop with d5. So he played rook to g7 here, allowing the trade, and I went ahead and went for it. As I said, the chess engine is not entirely sure this is winning, and doesn't really agree with the trade because, well, really you should keep the material on until you're sure you're winning. But I thought this would be a pretty easily winning endgame with these passed pawns. But there does come a point where he has a chance. So well, let's go forward a few moves. So far, so good. I bring my king up. I bring my pawns up, and then he plays knight to b1. At this point, he could have given me a harder time. I mean, this is still winning for white here. He could have gone for the check, which actually wins a pawn. But then I can pick up this pawn over here. So it's just a trade once again, and I still have this passed pawn, and my king is in a good position. So this is still good for white, I think. And anyway, he went knight b1. And I went bishop d7. There's a neat endgame trick here, which the chess engine points out. I can actually play the move bishop to f5, and he can't take the pawn because bishop here traps the knight. This is something you should always look for in these bishop versus knight endgames. If there's a way to trap the knight on the side of the board, this is simply winning. He can't make any progress over here, and I have two pawns that I can just push forward. So, 2 pawns plus my king against his king basically is what's going on, and that's an easy win. Anyway, I went bishop d7, looking at his pawn, and we end up trading off a couple more pawns, and I am starting to worry a little bit because if enough pawns disappear, it might get hard to win. but I still have a winning edge here. F4, he goes knight E3, go bishop to C6, defending this pawn. He goes B5, yeah, and this is at the point where I was starting to worry, and F5 is actually a move that lets him draw. So, yeah, the pawn turns out to be a bit awkwardly placed. We'll see that in a minute. The correct move here was to go ahead and trade 2 more pawns. A little bit counterintuitive because you want to keep as many pawns on as you can, then push F5, and then play bishop to C6. Now, it's not obvious to me that that this is winning for white, but this was the line that the chess engine gives as being best for white. And after F5, it seems like there's a drawing line for black. So let's continue, and we'll show how that goes. So he played B4, played F6 check. Maybe this is the move that I was thinking about when I said the pawn is awkwardly placed. It's actually difficult for me to advance that pawn. He blockades with the king. I was thinking, you know, I can chase the king off of that square with the bishop, but we'll see about that. Let's see. First, I have to worry about stopping this pawn from coming forward, so I play bishop A4. And now he took on D5, and that allows me to win. The winning move for black here, or the drawing move, is knight to C4. So not taking that pawn. The problem with taking that pawn is he walks into this this skewer here. So knight takes D5 is the final blunder. But if he played knight C4 here, say I play bishop to C2, trying to bring my bishop around, chase the king off that blockading square. He can play knight to E5 from that C4 square. Let's see, I can bring my bishop to F5, trying to get to this square. But now we can push this pawn forward, and I can check his king and drive it back. But then I have to move my my bishop back because this guy is going to queen very quickly. My king is too far away. I've got to stop it with the bishop, and he can just stop my pawn too, and I can't make any progress. So that would be a draw if he had spotted this knight c4 idea, the idea of coming into e5. Maybe not so easy to spot in an end game, in a blitz game when you're low on time, but that was a drawing chance for black. So instead he played this move. Knight takes d5, and then I win after I get the skewer here. So he defended, but I just start pushing those pawns forward, and at this point I can even sacrifice the bishop because my pawns run through quickly enough. And at this point his clock ran out, but he really has no good move here. He is just losing. So anyway, interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you later. Bye.